You're on.
We're buffering at the beginning. Hi, I'm Aaron, and this is Randy over here on the other side. And we're here with Ovation Music Studios, located in Gallatin, Tennessee. Today, we're giving you hot tips on ear training and just some other musical things to kind of help grow your music brain and the ears that go along with it. So, yeah, that's about it. So, Randy, how did I do in my intro?
I was also a pretty excellent intro. What do you guys think? Leave it in the comments below.
Well, thank you. So this is our third little talk series here. First week we talked a little bit about some of our favorite blues riffs, and yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. And then last week we discussed a little bit of kind of the differences between ear training and music theory, which is a pretty big topic, which wouldn't be like finished discussing within one.
Yeah, I don't know that we ever came up with a conclusion, but
yeah, it was more about how it was more trying to define them and how you use them in different ways. And I think today is going to be something that's a little more of a practical application. This is you are a early budding musician, maybe even into intermediate, maybe even a skill that can go like all the way till current use. But we're discussing, at least to open this conversation, what is your favorite ear training practice? Like, what's your favorite technique for developing your ear? What is your, I guess we could say for beginners, or we can say just in general.
Well, the exercise I chosen goes for any level.
Okay.
But if you know the theory, you can't do it without theory.
Right.
you
Exactly.
automatically revert to doing it with theory. So I'm not going to be able to do it without theory, but it is possible.
Right. Yeah. And this is piggybacking off of last week. A lot of this stuff will be like the ear training and music theory will kind of mesh a little bit, but we're thinking practical, right? So what you got?
Also, I'll go first. All right. So
I'm throwing it to you.
Simple exercise that everybody does, I find completely wrong.
Hot take.
Well, I'm trying to use this is going to be on YouTube, so we want to use like hot terms, right? So we want to say completely wrong. So
forget everything you know. This one trick will. Doctors hate it.
What everybody does is they sit down, they play a note, they sing it, da, and then they play another note, da, and they sing it. I find that process is backwards for me.
Okay.
It's much better ear training exercise when done in reverse. So we're going to get our first pitch by playing and singing, da, but then we're going to sing a second pitch, da, da. Now we want to find that second pitch while we're playing, da, da. And I missed it. Right. It's a third. I think a third. See, and I didn't use the theory, so I was lost.
But that's okay, because that kind of thing, like, it's funny. Keep going, because when I get to mine, it's going to be. I'm going to try not to be a copycat. Very similar.
So the idea is that once you know the theory, you can practice singing particular intervals. And trying to do it without theory, I missed it. I sang a third. I sang the third quite well, actually, but I played it awfully. I played a second. So I try to sing that third. Da, 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 and then kind of, you got to check your tuning. Checking your tuning in memory can be a little bit convoluted. Don't trust it 100%.
Okay.
You want to record yourself and play it back to check the tuning.
Okay.
But it's not, for me, this exercise isn't about tuning. It's about the general awareness of the intervals.
Sure.
So then you sing the scale basically one note ahead of where you're playing. Da, 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 da. And you have have to lower the octave, lower the octave. It's this, you can make, if you're a professional singer, make this a vocal exercise. If you're
Sure.
just a player, don't worry about try to sing in tune more than anything. Maybe sing it. We were talking in another vocal video about normal singing. Keep it just quiet and soft, a little airy, and just
Right.
don't hurt yourself. Just hit the notes.
Right. Right.
And you can do this. The coolest thing about this exercise is you can do this exercise on any instrument, no matter what instrument you play.
Right. So, yeah, you don't have to have a chordal instrument. You don't have to have.
Yeah. And you don't have to even play that instrument. I could go pick up a violin or a ukulele that I don't play, though, which they're probably close enough to guitar that I can get around on them anyways.
Sure.
But I could pick them up and do this exercise and find the notes on the violin.
Right.
And it's very simple. And then for the super advanced guys, what you want to be able to do is sing a different scale than you're playing.
Okay.
Ahead of it. So you're playing one note, but you're singing a harmony, and so you can really get out in left field with it. Play a major scale, sing an E minor scale.
Right.
And even my ear training is not good enough to handle that because the intervals just get outrageous. That one's not too bad.
Right. Doing thirds with that. I think that so I'm not trying to be a copycat, I swear, but when prompted, what do you think is the best thing you can do to develop your ear? I say match pitch with your vocals with singing, and you don't have to be a singer. You can just hum the note. You can be very just comfortable, and sometimes your instrument, like maybe you have a very high pitched voice and you play like a bass guitar, and sometimes it's really hard to match the note because it's so low that you feel like you can't sing some of those notes in the same register. That's okay. There's a way around that too, that just takes a little bit of further explanation about octaves, and I'm not going to go heavy into that for right now because I want to keep it super simple to start. And I think matching pitch, like humming, whatever your note is, don't be inhibited by it if you're a new musician. If you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm, and sometimes it's very hard. You'll have someone and go you go, okay, we're gonna match pitch with that note, and you can go, okay, great, match pitch. But sometimes someone might go, and they don't know that they're not hitting it yet. So sometimes just the simple act of saying, hey, match pitch takes. It is easier said than done if you're at the very, very, very beginning and you're wanting to get or maybe you're not at the very beginning. Maybe you can play your instrument, but you've never tried applying your voice in that way to it. And I've had many students that they could play a blues song pretty darn well, and they've never, but they could memorize the motions of how it goes, but they haven't necessarily done any of these note figuring out by ear necessarily. So when it came time to match pitch, it was a very intimidating thing. So one thing, if you are just trying to make your ear better, it's match pitch with absolutely everything that you hear, anytime, anywhere you go. Anything, absolutely anything. And I'm starting with this is my hot tip. It's not really super, it may seem kind of obvious, but if you are too inhibited and you don't believe that it's oh, I have to be this good a singer before I can ever just kind of copy the notes that you can with your voice, then you're missing out on a lot of really, really valuable ear training. Matching pitch. And if you're at that level and you're like, man, I'm having trouble even matching pitch, there are some things you can do to check. Many people are going to be past this point, but for those that aren't, let me just go ahead and say, if you're trying to hit a note and you feel like you can't, you play it on your instrument and you feel like it's really hard to find it, sometimes pick multiple places, pick maybe the low part of your instrument, the high part of your instrument. If it's on piano, try the high, the low, the middle, try different places and play a note and then try to match it. And if you are struggling to match it, try ramping up to it. Go until you can find it. If you feel like you just have no hope of matching it, do a little and just try going low and up until you find that you're hitting the match of that note. And even if you're like, oh, I've been told I'm tone deaf and I can't figure out any of that, like more than likely you are not. It's very, very rare.
I will say I hate that term. I do think some people have less awareness of what they're supposed to be listening for. And that's one thing we haven't touched on is what are we listening for something to be in tune? Because when we are in tune, we really don't get any feedback. The wavelengths line up perfectly, and it just sounds like the same thing when it's perfectly in tune, as opposed to being out of tune, especially like near out of tune, you get a strong pulsing thing.
Sure.
It's almost like it's got a drum beat in there.
Right.
And then as it gets to alternate, some intervals have some stability, but they still pulse a little bit, but they're closer.
Sure.
Like that interval's pulsing, but it's pulsing real slow. This interval, because of the way we tune, is pulsing more than it should, but it's still fairly stable.
Right.
And that, you can hear it. It's going. It sounds like the wrong notes.
Yeah.
But then there, it's really hard to tell that I even played two notes.
Right. And that's there is a, when you're doing that ramping up to a note, which you will hear as you get closer, it will become more violently sounding, and then it disappears.
Let's hear it.
So like if I played and I went, and you will hear, if I'm not on it, you will get, there will be, not only will there be a different feeling in terms of what the sound is, as long as you're just kind of listening for it in general, but the interval not being the same, when it is the same, there is a very, like, there's a feeling, a clarity of matching it. Which is like, there's a lot of technical things you can worry about, but most of the time, most people that when they're working on matching pitch, I usually, when they hit the note, they know it. And anytime they don't hit the note, they're like, I'm not sure, am I hitting it, blah, blah, blah. And then the moment they hit it, they go like, oh, right, I'm hitting it.
Yeah.
So you can confuse yourself a lot by going like, wait, was that this or this or this? But when you're just matching one note to itself, usually like in a slow moment where you can just check, there's usually not a whole lot of confusion there. I haven't seen too much. Now, you may have to take it slow. You may need a second opinion. You might need someone there to kind of help you, guide you into that moment of matching a pitch well. But
somebody can say, yes, that's it. What, you know.
Yeah. Sometimes you need that reinforcement in that positive, yes, I got it. And you'll remember that moment that you got it, and the feeling of those two notes lining up together, like all that positive association. I mean, I'm a teacher, like part of it is for me to recognize when you do it right, and when you do it right, to say, yes, you did. Not to just say, great job if you did it wrong. You need reinforcement at the right time when you match that pitch.
That's a whole nother discussion. Should we ever say great job when you do something wrong?
I'm
or another time.
I think that's very person to person.
Yeah.
Sometimes, that's where it gets a little bit like the caretaker side of like.
Yeah, and with singing so personable.
Yeah.
It is the only instrument we're attached to. And I think the purpose we both came up with vocal exercises for ear training is because our vocal cords and the airways that cross our vocal cords are attached to our ears.
Yes.
How close they are. They're literally touching each other through air.
Right. And it is something that, because, most people, you're speaking, like speaking as a tonal, like there's tones, there's inflections, there's movements of pitch that are in your voice all day. So why not go ahead and connect that to your instrument, connect that to your music? And I think the longer you wait to, as like, so like, I'm a guitarist, I only play guitar, I'm a terrible singer, and blah, blah, blah. You don't have to be a singer, just match pitch.
Yeah.
The longer you wait, the more of a disservice you're doing for your ability to recognize sounds and copy them, and even to like conceptualize an idea yourself based off of just what you're hearing.
Now,
Yeah. So
the reason I like to do it backwards falls under this singing thing. If I do it backwards, basically sing first and then play second,
right.
then I don't ever have to match the pitch with my voice.
Oh, okay.
So I take out that element of being wrong with my voice, and then I can be wrong with my instrument, which is more comfortable. It's more comfortable for me to be wrong on the guitar than it is for me to be wrong vocally.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so it's more of a shyness thing. Oh,
Okay.
I should probably plug my battery in.
Yeah. Before your screen goes black. But yeah, I would say like with doing okay. So you're saying you prefer to match the instrument to your voice.
Sing a note, da, find it, and then da 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 da. And of course,
Right.
I'm major arpeggio there.
Sure. Sure.
And that's where the theory element comes in. You can go, I want to purposely sing Phrygian major. Da, 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 da. You know,
Right.
and really getting a handle on doing something on purpose or singing complex intervals, but singing first and then playing. That way the vocal is never wrong.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Because
And
the vocal is so personal.
right. Right. Okay. Well, cool. I mean, look.
That's why I said the other way is completely wrong.
Yeah, everyone's doing it backwards.
Completely wrong, guys.
The subject of like attaching. Well, okay. So this is. I kind of wanted to put a second, like an addendum tip to this. If the first tip was, it was speak or like sing any sound that you hear, anything that you play. If you have like whatever you can sing or speak, like get used to you and your instrument being able to do
Yeah.
whatever it wants to do. Like if whatever you can do on your instrument, try to do with your voice. Now, obviously, like a piano goes up to that note. I'm not going to try doing that necessarily. Although it's yeah. So like so not everything musically like is easily imitated with your voice. So that's why I want to give like a step 2 to this.
Okay.
And the step 2 is when you're learning ear training, when you're like, I want to learn, basically, what's the end goal here? I want to learn how to play songs that I like, or I want to be able to create, and I want to just understand how all of it moves. Well, the singing part is great for things that happen one note at a time, sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can use that to understand scales. You can use that for a lot of things. But when it comes time for learning harmony, and learning how chords work or how notes interact with each other, you need to simulate that by yourself in some way. If it's just you and the instrument and you're like, I want to get better at chords, so you have to utilize the two things separately. So you can play a note and harmonize with that note. Now, one of the things that's kind of fun and just kind of like relaxing to do is to just play a note. And yeah, we're talking about match the pitch with it, but maybe pick a note, don't think too much about it. Da, and I picked like a flat 6 there. And so you can hear with that one, I just chose to pick a note. Ba, ba, and all I'm doing is I'm trying to sing another note against it.
Okay.
That is just an addendum thing you can do
Sing intervals.
To sing, it's just make chords with your instrument. Don't just try to match the pitch of your instrument, but try to make a chord with your instrument. You can or play in that space, but try to, if you're trying to match pitch, and that's like the main goal there, but now you want to understand more about harmony. One of the things you can do is play a note on your instrument and try to sing another note. And if you don't like how that note sounds, go to another note. Go to it, and then kind of hold on to that feeling.
Music really is that is the simplest part of music. If you don't like the sound of a note, go Play a different one.
Yeah, like when I first did that,
Use
I
that.
went da, and someone oh, that's kind of is he even in tune? And I put it in the context of these two notes, and it's like, oh, that sounded kind of like minor and wistfully, and it's like, oh, in the context of other things, even those two notes.
Wow, that's so crazy how different people's ears are.
Well, I mean, some people will hear
The
a note.
note I heard was this.
Right, right. And so like the
It sounds
context
like
that
a major chord.
right, right. And it's like you were hearing it as like part of a major chord. I was hearing it as part of a minor chord. But you know, music. There's so many relationships you can have between notes. That what's neat is that when you sing against that, you will hear that interval. And let's get to music theory. You'll hear that interval, and you'll start to make an association of how it makes you feel, and that too, emotional response, or like just in general, like how you feel about that sound, is very easy to play a note, sing it. How do I feel about that interval? It's very good for your ear, because the next time you come across that feeling, you'll recognize it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and I do like to refer to intervals as in simplest terms, stable or tense.
right.
Stable intervals tend to want to move, and if in that minor six, if you do play them together with no other reference, it wants to move. For me,
Right.
fourths want to move. In
Right.
my
Right.
head, though, they're fairly stable. Seconds have to move.
Right. Right.
You know, but they can move either direction. Sevenths always just sound weird.
You know, it's just this, in that right now, like your feeling towards these intervals, right? Like it becomes very personal, and
Yeah,
it's like that dissonance is, and that's a way that you recognize it,
yeah.
and and you're never going to come up with your own feelings of how to use it until you kind of just use it.
And so now I know if I want something that's got a lot of tension in it, I can play that minor six and that minor seventh like back to back, and it'll be super tense.
Mhm. And what happens with some, like, yeah, right, right, you can feel like the, like when an interval has a particularly like complex relationship like between the notes, like when they happen to have, which I'm trying, like I'm desperately trying not to get into the math of it or like even touch on it, because I really just want to say some people, everybody approaches some sounds that they hear, and sometimes they'll hear a sound like this and they'll go like, they might think that's ugly or dissonant or out of tune, and other people will hear the idea of that as a thing that moves, and now suddenly it takes on a different thing, or they hear it just on its own and they go like, wow, that sounds really out of tune, and and no one's wrong in that case, but it's important that you do this, understand, and we're just talking two notes here, right? So my hot tip number one was match pitch for things. That's a one note thing. My hot tip for number two: play a note and sing another one. And this is what we're just talking about, like as far as intervals are
I'm
concerned.
just hearing whether they're dissonant or in tune.
Yes, whether, and or just how you feel about them. Yeah, and making judgments on them. Are they in tune? Do they, what do they make you feel like?
How do you feel about them? Because then you can use those intervals later for certain things. You'll know that, especially if you got a less complex piece of music like punk rock, where you don't have three or four note chords, you have two note chords. You can
Sure.
find some dissonant notes to throw over the top of them really easy that can sound cool. Uh,
Yeah. Or
or
you, or the sing,
or
the note the singer sings. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Sometimes the singers are singing those more complex notes in general, but the guitars are always playing this.
Yeah.
But the singer will sing.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. They'll fill in the blank there. And it, or the, like they'll complete an idea with the melody, which happens all the time in rock. And it's the time a singer took to go, oh, I'm going to sing this note over the band's what they're playing, and they liked how that sounded, and thus, right, they're making these choices, they're making these like judgments on how it makes them feel or what they like about it. And all of those, even if you don't have the names for them, like that's a flat third, that's a flat six, that's a sharp
Yeah,
four,
you can still sing them.
you can still sing them, and you can still like, you can still develop that, like what you like about it.
Yeah.
And you'll find some that you're like, oh man, it's so, you have to kind of love the idea of harmonizing with your instrument. Like you have to really enjoy that, because it's like, oh, I'm singing with my instrument because a chord is happening. We're not on the same note, although you can be on the same note too, and that's great. But when you step away from it, you learn a lot about the choices you make and what you like and how they make you feel, because you don't necessarily have a guide all the time with your voice about where your voice is supposed to go with it,
Yeah.
unless you're working on specific songs or whatever. But if it's just you playing around, you can come up with all kinds of relationships interval wise that you may never have thought to do and then you can replicate it on your instrument too. So that's my hot tip for 2 notes.
Nice.
My
Now,
hot tip for 3 notes. Which I mean, I was planning to go further, but
we can go 3 notes. I was just pitches, yeah, because the fundamentally seeing a pitch and being able to play it on your instrument, or playing a pitch on your instrument and being able to sing it, just that simple matching back and forth, it works for all levels. It's the complexity of how well you know what you're playing and singing before you do it. That complexity is the only thing that changes for me. Starting out, it's just matching. It's just matching, and then you do 1 note in a row, 2 notes in a row. Can you sing 5 notes in a row? Can you play it? I like to do it like what was that little 4-light game, Simon?
Yeah.
What was it called? Little 4 lights. It blinks 1 light, you match that one. You blink
Exactly.
the second one, you match those. You do them at a time like that. Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum. Now, this is obviously like a bluesy kind of pattern. I know I'm in a blues scale. It could be stupid weird, too. You could play bum, 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 bum. Ooh, that was hard to find. And when you get weirder like that and you go outside of the theory of the scales and things, it gets harder because you're not used to hearing it. And I don't know that I've ever heard anybody play a melody that sounds like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Sounds nice.
we may have to put something to it. So, and then now we're writing with music theory, and our tangents are abundant.
Yes, and now, well, that's it's bound to happen. But I'm desperately clinging to. I'm like, hot tip 1, and I'm saying this over again because repetition legitimizes. But
That's where it's at, man.
so yeah, but hot tip 1 is match pitch with whatever you're playing, like individual note wise. So that's like, and however, yeah, you can do it with whatever. It doesn't matter. Just match the note. And if it takes a while to kind of get used to that, that's fine. And for two notes, play a note and sing a different note. That seems pretty easy. But when you get into 3 notes, and then 4 notes, and then 5 notes, and then 6 notes, and then 7, how do you develop like learning how to hear all those sounds? And there's
1
there's
note at a time.
well, yeah, one note at a time is a way. There's a lot to be said for this. But if you're working on like learning how to recognize chords,
Okay.
and learning how to recognize, and we're saying 3-part or 4 or 5 or 6. First, however you can do it, if you need to pick up a chordal instrument. I'm sorry, I'm getting to that point. If you're a horn player, play some piano. If you're, you know what I mean, like pick up a guitar. For most people, it really, 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 really helps if you want to learn how to work with chords. Find a chordal instrument. Like if you're somebody that doesn't need a chordal instrument to compose chordally, it's pretty rare. but that's okay. I'm saying pick up an instrument, even just the bare bones beginning, learn some of the chords to the songs that you play.
Yeah, and I would to that note, if you play an instrument that doesn't have frets on it,
Mhm.
your training can go a lot faster or a lot slower, depending on if it's done properly. You don't necessarily want to vocal match chords to the violin because you can play way out of tune very easily. Whereas with piano, the notes are in tune.
Well, right. And we're talking about like developing your ear in like in the Western world we live in. It like the
Both
we
evenly spaced.
say what?
Both
Yeah, right.
evenly spaced.
In our world where we only have 12 notes and then octaves of those notes, which is still, that's oversimplification on like, and even in the stuff that we listen to. But I'm trying not to get derailed. If pick up a chordal instrument and learn how to play those chords, like learn how to play however you can get a hold of it. If you want to learn how to play a song, and you want to learn how to pick out by ear songs that have bigger harmonies or even ones that just have major and minor chords, you need to learn how to play a few chords on your instrument. You need to learn how to play a few songs that are like that so that you can already start recognizing, oh, this feels like a major chord. This feels like a minor chord. You can do that in like simpler ways that are more complicated, but this is me saying like on a big level, if you want to hear a song and go, oh, this is going from this chord to this chord to this chord. If you've done your ability to match pitch and you've gotten some comfortability with intervals, then when you have chords, at least just a few songs, chords under your belt, you will start to combine these things and you'll start to hear where the chords go using the first two methods. You'll start to hear when notes move where it feels like. But when it comes time for just going, is this chord major? Is this chord minor? Is this chord a seventh chord? What are these bigger chords that exist? How are they being used? Learn them in a song that you like. Find a song that has some chords that you like that maybe use. If you want to learn how a major seven chord works, or to be able to hear it, play songs that have major seven chords in them. Find anywhere, ask the internet or go to your teacher, find a song that has a major seven chord in it and play it. Because once you play with those and you get used to how the sounds interact with each other, when you hear a major seven chord, like it'll give you a certain feeling when you recognize it as that name. You'll develop relationships with it just like you did when you played one note and sang against it. So learn how to play, and the well goes very deep on this one because there's so many ways you can play a chord. But my advice is if you want to get better at chords, seek out songs that you like that have those chords in them. And if you struggle to find out what those chords are, that's when a teacher, or even if you can find the right instructional thing, can really, really help. I mean, they can help on all levels, but with chord stuff, you may struggle to go, oh, is it that chord? Because just like matching pitches, when you play the right chord and you're listening to the song, when you do the right chord, you will recognize it, just like matching pitch.
Absolutely.
But you have to spend time with chords, just like you have to spend time with individual notes. So if you want to get better at hearing where songs go, and generally most songs that we listen to are comprised of single note things like what a singer sings or what a guitar riff does, but they're also composed of melody or of harmony, of chords being played all at once. And about the only way to really get good at chords is this is an annoying hot tip for 3. This isn't hot, but it's to be able to play those chords. And if you want tips on how to play certain chords based off their name, that's great, but learn the song that you're listening to. And even if you don't know the name of the chord you're playing, if you're matching the chord to it, which is harder to do than just matching a single note, if somehow you do that, still do that, and that's great. But I have lots of tips for chords that is really hard to distill into one thing.
That's another video though.
That is another video. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But to keep, before I go into harmony, because harmony is too big of a thing, today is ear training, mostly for melody,
There's only
somewhat for
4
interval.
chords. Don't listen to him. There's only
Yeah. It's one, 4, 5, and 6.
Money, there's only 4 chords.
Not.
A new song already. I'm probably going to get flagged now for something.
I guess we should at some point. We need to have a discussion that is why the 4-chord, the common 4-chord thing that you're showing off there, like how it works, why it works, how it's worked for so long. Not from a political reason. Like we can get into the politics of it too.
When you say it worked for so long, most of you guys think, okay, yeah, I've heard a bunch of songs with those chords. Like this is like since only, let's see, 450 some odd years ago, we tuned to 12 perfectly even notes. It's only been 450 years, and instantly at that point, we started using these 4 chords. Instantly.
We used more than that too.
The year that this happened, they started using these 4-chord cycles. Before that, we did not tune in this manner. We didn't have 12 evenly spaced notes. Chords were tuned till they were perfectly in tune. So if you tuned to C, your C was perfectly in tune. Your A was not.
Right. I mean, I would love to have a discussion on equal temperament.
That's the whole equal temperament versus just intonation, but because when
versus Pythagorean
changed what we use, we started using this 4-chord cycle. And honestly, if you're going to get good at ear training, learn to hear it. The toughest ones is when they start on the 4 for me. Now I'm definitely gonna get flagged for that one.
Yeah, we're already hearing a hit. Hit in the making. Oh, okay. So anyway, in summation, I'm trying to host this. I did the intro.
Aaron's the host tonight, guys.
Sorry. I'm like hot tips. Leave it as hot tips. But I would love to talk about tuning systems.
Tuning systems, chords, all of this has absolutely everything to do with ear training.
Yeah, I mean it does.
But Aaron's hot tips.
Hot tip 1: anything that you play on your instrument, try to sing it. Any of it, anything you hear on the radio, make sure you're driving. Well, radio, Spotify, whatever you're listening to, try to match the pitch of it. Anything.
On a side note, and maybe this wasn't good for like learning how to sing, but it was really good for learning how to match pitch. I actually learned to match pitch to a lawnmower. Slightly flat. The lawnmower I had was a slightly flat. And so I harmonized with it, and when I got perfect fifths, it's like a really powerful perfect fifth in my head. Obviously, nobody can hear me singing over the lawnmower.
Right.
But yeah, when he says anything,
it's like mine's a microphone, a microwave ding.
You can sing with.
And it's like, oh, it's ready.
Remember when ringtones were simple and you could switch to ringtones?
So I'll turn this into a Generation Y podcast. But seriously, match pitch, anything, everything. It seems simple, but a lot of you are not doing it, and you should. Absolutely. Because you're afraid of being a singer. Don't worry about the singing part of it. Just match pitch. Just do it. Do it today.
100% agree with that.
Yep. It seems obvious. It seems simple, but you will have a lifetime of work ahead of you if you just try to match pitch with anything that's there, and it will come out in your playing.
Mm-hmm. And then tip 2.
And then tip 2 is make harmonies with your instrument. Play a note, sing a note with it. That was tip 2. That's a little bit. I'm just gonna keep it simple. That's tip 2. That's don't overthink it. Play a note.
For all you perfect pitch guys out there, this one's probably where your starting point is. If you have perfect pitch and you can perfectly sing anything that you hear, immediately skip that first step and go to step 2, because you still recognize the intervals.
Well, I mean, no, still do the first one. Still do the first one.
True.
Because you could, I mean, still do the first one, you know. And most of the time, people that have that or that have perfect pitch are usually
If you
naturally.
have perfect pitch, will you leave it in the comments?
I think I've ever had maybe 3 students ever that have had it, and
I,
what's that?
I've always found something ironic about perfect pitch. Everybody I've met with it seemingly has perfect pitch in 440. And they don't seem to distinguish. Well, I guess they can distinguish the frequencies, which is why they hear 440, but they hear 440 is in tune, and everything that's not 440 is out of tune.
Uh, I don't think everybody's like that, but I think some get it and some, you know what I mean. Some people that's we're tangent time, but yeah, if perfect pitch is something that's like kind of nurtured and developed in early childhood, whatever sounds you're used to hearing in early childhood kind of help give you context for what that is usually.
Yeah.
So there are some people that I think have developed perfect pitch from, I've heard it anecdotally and I've heard it through studies where they grew up in a household that the piano was a little bit flat. And so for them, A was a different pitch, you know, like a little bit flatter than what most people would say. So I think how you develop it is key too. But, you know, I'm going off anecdotal. But I know that people with perfect pitch, ear training is still, you know, like developing a relationship with music is something that is just as applicable, you know, like, so like matching pitch with stuff, you'll find, you know, you're like, ooh, I like how that feels, you know, so do that too.
After 25 years of studying music and being a professional for the last almost 20 years and everything I've done, I still work on step 1.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one area, no matter how good I get, my ear can be better because I don't think I can ever get my ear perfect. So I'm striving to get as close to that as possible.
My favorite thing that comes from all, I guess we're saying hot tips, but I'm kind of like, I'm feeling closing arguments happening. So I at least want to say why do this. I know for me, doing ear training, one of my favorite things is the art that I love, the music that I love, the ability to replicate that in some way on my instrument or just by my own doing is one of the most satisfying things, because it makes it, when you can replicate it in some way and understand how it was created, there's a whole lot of satisfaction in that to me. Being able to hear like someone chooses like these chords and how they work together, and when I feel like I am confidently like understanding by what they're trying to express through art, when I learn how to imitate it myself, it's like I feel like I'm getting closer to what they were trying to say. And whether that's just like the mood between 2 notes and how they feel, I feel like the better I get at recognizing it and replicating it, the closer I am to the artist and the art that I love. So that's why develop your ear, you know?
I can't say it better than that.
That's but seriously.
That's the whole purpose.
For me, you know, and I think for a lot.
I mean, I can read books all day long, but I have to be able to hear it to play something passionate.
Yeah, you know, there's so anyway, yeah, develop your ear. That way you can be closer to the art you love. That's what I say. Okay.
No arguments from this guy. That was an excellent discussion. More tangents on the way.
Yes. You do the closing. I did the intro.
Oh, is that how? So
I'm passing the buck.
we should do the closings and the intros because we're still figuring this out. This is fun.
Right. I'll let you handle the last.
Guys, I'm Randy from Ovation Music and Studios. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Aaron Keene. Yeah,
Hello there.
This is right today.
We did it.
It records in gallery when I'm in gallery.
Oh, okay, cool.
I have no idea. As much as I use technology all day, every day in my life, like I can do some really complex stuff in Pro Tools.
Right.
I don't know how a computer works. I don't. It took me. It's taken me 6 months to figure out how to turn off automatic updates.
The trick is the same that you did when you got on stage the first time, and it's fake it till you make it.
Oh, I think it's shake like a leaf on a tree.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, that's true too.
It's so hard. That's another topic for you guys. But thank you so much for hanging out with us. Again, you can go to ovationmusicandstudiostn.com. Please click subscribe, like. There's a notification bell now. There's comment boxes. So many different ways you can interact. There's even a thumbs down button. Not for everybody.
Yeah, right.
Instagram, Aaron King Guitar. Check it out. You're still doing the Instagram stuff?
Occasionally.
Occasionally, yeah. There's some cool stuff going on there. A lot of vocals, bass, guitar. I've seen some piano.
Yeah, we're all keeping ourselves occupied here at home. I guess quarantine's about up, but I don't want to date this video.
So. Let's see. We don't. It is May 8th. Quarantine procedures have started to lift in the United States.
There we go. I feel like we just dramatically changed the tone. means.
Nobody knows what it means.
I'm sorry. I was just like, we were like, okay, but da-da-da-da-da. And then it's like, I just felt like we were like putting a log, like we were, like we had a handheld thing and we're in a bunker.
In the comments, tell me what note this is.
Goodbye.